It is July 9th, 2025, and Israel is continuing on with its genocide of the Palestinian people, killing more than 100 Palestinians in just 24 hours, some of whom were seeking humanitarian aid in this ongoing criminal scheme that the U.S. and Israel have put together to make it look like to the international community that they are giving aid to the Palestinians while killing hundreds of them in the process. Now, as all of that is happening, you also have Netanyahu in Washington, D.C. for 2 days of meetings with Trump. And as they are talking, you have Hamas continuing to carry out ambush attacks targeting IDF troops. So, what does all of this mean for the overall genocide and for the ongoing tensions in the region? Well, we got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Laith Marouf, a Palestinian-Syrian journalist and host of Free Palestine TV based in Lebanon. Laith, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Great to be with you, Rachel.
Now, I'm glad I get to talk to you today and kind of get your take on a lot of the latest here as we've been continuing to watch. Israel has continued its genocide of the Palestinians, and Hamas has also kept up with its latest ambush attacks. Targeting and killing several IDF soldiers, with the latest attacks reported in this so-called buffer zone that Israel is now occupying in northern Gaza. Now, Israel is also responding, retaliating by attacking and killing Palestinians, killing more than 100 in just 24 hours. And several of those were, of course, seeking humanitarian aid. We have that horrific scheme going on. So, how do you view the current state of the genocide and the significance of these latest attacks coming from Hamas?
Well, it's clear that the genocide is not slowing down. The Zionists have decided that this is the way to go. This is their final aim, is to get rid of as many Palestinians as possible. And in terms of the resistance, it's actually been clear two things. One is that the attacks that the Iranians conducted in their retaliation, directed towards the intelligence gathering points of the Israeli military and intelligence forces like the Mossad and the Aman and the Shabak and Unit 8200, plus all the command and control for their drone and long range surveillance in Beit Sheba in the during that 12-day war has had a significant decrease in the capabilities of the Zionists to monitor what's happening in Gaza and to safeguard their own soldiers or command and control the movements of them. So what happened over the last week of those multiple attacks by Hamas, including this latest one, are a clear example of that deterioration of the abilities of the Israelis to surveil Gaza and command and control the situation on the ground. And what was very significant about this attack in Beit Hanoun is actually this is the most northern eastern corner of the Gaza Strip, and the attack happened outside the Gaza Strip in the buffer zone inside what is 1948 or Israel proper, in a gathering point for the Israeli military. And the resistance managed to rehabilitate tunnels that took them all the way to there and to lay out a huge minefield and create this ambush where one tank arrived and it was blown up, and then an APC arrived to help those soldiers in the burning tank, and it was blown up. And then there was a jeep that came and it was blown up. And then finally, when more soldiers arrived to help those three vehicles, the whole minefield was blown up on them. So up until now, the Israelis keep on, bringing up the number of their dead every few hours since yesterday. So now we know the Israelis are admitting up to 12 dead Israeli soldiers. The images that we saw, and just counting the number of soldiers that were blown up inside this minefield, it's clear it's more closer to 30 Israeli soldiers dead. So that shows us also how Hamas has you know, taken advantage of Iran's response, and is capable of still till today, 22 months, to organize and conduct very complex operations like this one.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that because in the Western media and looking at the numbers that are reported, I haven't even seen 12. I've seen 5, maybe 8, them admitting that those are the IDF soldiers that were killed. They're not getting anywhere close to admitting the true scale of this attack. And as you're noting there, I mean, when we're talking about, nearly 2 years of this genocide that has been carried out, dropping the equivalent of multiple nuclear bombs on the Gaza Strip. It's a reminder that the targets here are mainly the Palestinian people, right? The civilians, wiping out as many people as they possibly can. And yet Israel still continues to look ridiculous when Hamas is able to carry out attacks like this. And I know that Netanyahu wasn't too happy about this one. He's in DC meeting with Trump. I guess they had 2 days of talks at the White House, and they're getting together really for their latest war criminal summit. Let's call it what it is. And you've got conflicting reports about ceasefire talks with Hamas. I know that Israel is trying to push for a 60-day ceasefire to basically give themselves time to rearm and reload to continue the genocide. But if there's anything we've learned at this point, it's of course that you can't trust anything that comes out of their mouths, and that especially as you have these reports that Trump is really putting the pressure on Netanyahu to agree to some kind of a deal to end what they're referring to as the war, because of course they won't call it what it is. But how do you see this meeting, and what should we be concerned about when it comes to Trump and Netanyahu getting together to essentially plan their next attack?
Yeah, there was a few important things that happened during this press conference that we were all privy to. One of them is Trump saying, when being asked about the two-state solution, he said, "I'll refer it to the greatest man in the world." This question to Netanyahu, and that's you know very similar to what he said a few weeks ago, that Israel is the greatest nation on earth. So looking at probably the American public seeing their own president say another nation is better than them, and another president or prime minister is better than him, those probably is the closest thing of understanding the power dynamic of what's happening in that room. And Trump referred the answers to multiple questions, not only this one, to Netanyahu. So clearly, he wasn't the one setting the tone of whatever that's going to be decided behind the closed doors. If this is how it is in front of the media, the president of the United States of America humiliating himself like that. Obviously, we also heard the question about the transfer of Palestinians from Gaza out of the extermination camp, and again, Trump referred to Netanyahu in this, and what we heard is Netanyahu claiming still that there's dozens of states that want to take the Palestinian refugees, and that all the countries around Israel are working with it. Now that he means basically the new Wahhabi Syria, Egypt, Jordan, and clearly the Saudis. So what will happen? Is there going to be a ceasefire? It doesn't look like it. And if there's a ceasefire, of course, it's going to be breached by Israel, because every ceasefire ever signed by the Israelis has been breached. And every time the United States guarantees any peace treaty or ceasefire, it collapses and the United States abandons it. So we can't, with the record that we have of decades of actions like this, it's clear where this is going to go. And finally, I would say the Israelis are currently building a large concentration camp in Rafah, in south of the Gaza Strip, and they want to move all the surviving civilians in Gaza into this concentration camp, where the populace will be not allowed to exit ever again. and they will be given the choice of staying in this concentration camp and fed sporadically and or be deported, forever out of Gaza. So that's still the plan. With all of those indicators, we know that the major plan that Israel has is either extermination of the Palestinians in Gaza and or their expulsion from the territory so they cannot come back and resist. And it's clear also that it's more realistic that the Zionists exterminate the Palestinians than any country in the world taking any of the refugees.
Yeah, I think that that is the grim reality there, but yet another reminder of exactly what they're trying to do. I mean, the US and Israel are not hiding this. They're not doing it in secret. They're doing it out in the public in front of everyone's faces, which is exactly what they've done this entire time. Now, on the topic of breaching ceasefires coming from Israel, I do want to bring Lebanon into the conversation because as we've watched, Israel has continued to violate its ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah on a daily basis. And now, as you have the leader of Hezbollah saying that the group will not disarm until Israel withdraws from southern Lebanon, and we don't expect that withdrawal to happen, you also have the IDF saying that it is carrying out raids on southern Lebanon, targeting weapons depots and other infrastructure there. How do you view the current situation, and should we be concerned about a wider war as we're watching Israel escalate and just show no signs of stopping here?
Yeah, especially given that the Israelis had their behind whipped basically by Iran, and now you see the Zionists around the world going crazy. They want some kind of revenge, and their revenge against the Palestinians in Gaza is not enough for their lust of blood and or for them to feel again superior, right? So it's very likely they will attempt to have a win in Lebanon just so they can, their egos that were bruised can feel better. And I'm not saying they will be winning or able to do it, but this is the most likely possibility, especially that their war with Iran is impossible without full American engagement, and the United States has escalated with Iran up to the threshold of just below the threshold of nuclear war and wasn't able to win anything. So, therefore, the possibility of a new direct war with Iran is out of the picture. Maybe there will be terrorism that is instigated by the West or separatism or whatever it is, but that's a different story. And therefore, it's clear the only thing that the Israelis can try to do to regain their ego is to attack Lebanon. And we've heard statements coming out from Western media about supposed talks between the Wahhabi government in Damascus, led by Al-Julani, and the Israelis, or about an exchange of territory where Al-Julani gives up part of the Al-Julan, and the Israelis allow these Wahhabi death squads to invade Lebanon and take over the second largest city in the country, Tripoli in the north, and the Beqa Valley, which is the food basket of the country. And that all happened and released in the media the days before the arrival of Trump's envoy, Barak, his last name, to the region. And Barak arrived and was also kind of threatening and talking about Lebanon being left behind and the continued sanctions if there is no handover of Hezbollah's weapons. And that triggered the first ever interview by Naim Qassem, the new Secretary General of Hezbollah, and there Naim Qassem spoke about how they will not be handing over weapons. And in that also interview, he talked about the mistakes in the war. He was very frank. I think the audience in the Hezbollah circles were satisfied with how frank and detailed the new Secretary General was in this interview. But this is the most likely possibility for a new war is a combined attack by the Wahhabi death squads on the north of Lebanon and by Israel in the south and in the air. There was a, kind of a rehearsal of that in January, days after the fall of the Assad government in Damascus. The HTS attempted to invade North Lebanon, and at that point, the Lebanese military just disappeared. And the local tribes and clans in the north of Lebanon picked up arms and fought back HTS, defeated them, destroyed all their columns, and then even crossed into Syria and liberated multiple Shia villages that were being slaughtered by HTS. And that only stopped because of two things. One, Israeli Air Force coming to the aid of the HTS at the time and bombarding the high positions of the clans on the border. And the other is the Lebanese army returning to the border to stop the tribes from going into Syria, not to defend the territory of Lebanon. So that was the rehearsal. And in that moment, it showed that the HTS is unable to defeat, the resistance here in Lebanon, and that with or without the Lebanese army's presence, there will, Hezbollah and the resistance can defend the country, and even with the air force of Israel, it cannot stop the resistance.
Yeah, it's very telling, and I appreciate that context there because I mean, even just watching it from the perspective of the US coming out this week and being like, oh, okay, don't worry about Al Qaeda on this front, HTS, whatever you want to call it. They're not terrorists anymore. And I'm looking at that and going, okay, what that means is they want the support to start rolling to them, right? They want to start making movements there. And of course, continuing to support these extremists, which is what they always do. And now, kind of taking a step back and looking at how Iran comes into play here, right? We've talked about some of the regional situations, and of course, Al-Julani continuing on doing Israel's bidding and the United States bidding in the region. Then you have Iran over here. And I'm curious too, kind of what you were saying. Obviously, we're not expecting when it comes to the next quote unquote attack from Israel and the US, we're not expecting it to look like the last one did, but there is still a lot of concern about what the US and Israel are going to try to do to pursue regime change in Iran and also to try to harm Iran's allies in the region, looking at various militias in Iraq and kind of the overall axis of resistance. So, what are you keeping an eye on there when it comes to what the US and Israel could be trying to kind of cook up for the region that will just keep this war going?
Yeah, there is multiple things that already it seems like have been moved, and since last night in Iraqi Kurdistan region on the border with Iran, there's been militia fighting. There's a whole tribe that's rose an uprising against the ruling family, the Barzani family, that's been American, Israeli, Asians since the 1940s. It's not clear even to me right now what's happening there. Is this tribe been moved by the Americans and the Israelis to undermine their own tool? And would that be just so they can open a door for HTS to cross from Syria into North Iraq and then into Israel? And that shows you how agents of the United States could be taken off their seats any moment and exchanged by somebody else if the utility requires that. And or it could be, up until now, I'm not sure, honestly, if it's Iran that's doing this in order to weaken the ruling family in Kurdistan, Iraq, that's been sending all the Iraqi oil through Turkey to Israel. So it's still open. We'll see where who's behind the strings being pulled. It's not clear yet. That's a very important border, and looking at how, with all that talk about taking over Lebanon by HTS, there's been all these maps going around right now of a new Syria that includes all of North Iraq and North Lebanon. Those are indications of what the West wants to happen. And it's hilarious because the people in the Fertile Crescent have been fighting since the end of World War I to unify. And every movement for unification has been fought against by the West and the Zionists. And today, it is the West that's going to try to unify under the guise of an HTS government. It shows you how actually ISIS and their project to unify this region was backed by the West again. Anyways, in Iran, there's also the Baluchi separatist movement that's on the border with Pakistan. They are very active in terrorist actions. There is millions, actually, of Afghanis in Iran. And over the last week and a half, with all the Iranian intelligence operations to capture agents of the Zionists on the ground, close to 90% of those agents that were captured were Afghani. There's almost now 200,000 Afghanis that have been expelled of Iran in the last week. That's a huge number, and this is continuing. And the final worry for Iran is the Azerbaijani borders. But Iran's state government structures have been very smart to elect Kazakhstan, an Azerbaijani Iranian, as the president of Iran. And that has kept the Azerbaijani population inside Iran, which is the largest minority, linguistic minority, kept them aligned with the government and the state against the collaborationist government of Azerbaijan just across the border.
Okay, wow. I to say that there's a lot of moving parts is an understatement, but I really appreciate you kind of going through the region with me, giving us updates on the latest and really explaining where these tensions stand because I think that that context is incredibly important as we continue to keep an eye on everything. Certainly a lot at stake here all around. Laith Marouf, a Palestinian-Syrian journalist and host of Free Palestine TV. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
See you soon.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanction. You can also catch Sanction over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.